The air was thick, humming with something I couldn't quite name. You know that feeling when everything looks normal on the outside, but inside, something's shifting? Quietly. Slowly. Like the ground beneath you's about to crack, but you don't even realize it yet. It was late. The kind of late where the house feels almost sacred. Soft jazz still playing from the speakers in the corner, the smell of red wine and roasted rosemary still hanging in the air. I was barefoot, walking across the cool tile, collecting wine glasses, some still half full. You'd think I was just cleaning up after a dinner party, something I've done 100 times before. But that night, something was different. My husband, Daniel, had invited a few friends over. A small gathering. Nothing fancy. Just food, laughter, stories. You know the kind. We'd done it before, these nights that blur together after you've been married long enough. But this one stuck. Because Ryan and Marcus, Daniel's friends, didn't leave when everyone else did. They stayed. Just the three of us in the kitchen. The clock ticking louder with every minute. Their laughter a little slower. Their eyes a little sharper. And me? I was smiling, but I could feel it. This strange heat creeping into the room. It wasn't overt. Not rude. Just unspoken. Charged. Marcus was leaning back against the counter, watching me pour the last bit of wine into a glass like I was doing something more than just topping off. And Ryan. Ryan was the one who said it. He looked right at me. Not like most men do. It wasn't lust. It was something more dangerous. Something more aware. He said, "You don't even realize, do you?" I blinked at him. Realize what? He tilted his head a little, smiling, not in a flirty way. No. It was deeper than that. Like he'd just discovered a secret and decided to speak it out loud. You're the kind of woman who changes the air in the room. That was it. Just that. And everything in me froze. Because something about the way he said it, the way Marcus stayed silent, just watching, the way my body reacted, before my brain even caught up. It was like I stepped outside myself for a moment. Like I was no longer Daniel's wife, no longer the hostess in control. Just a woman. A woman being seen. And God, that felt dangerous. Not because they said anything inappropriate, but because they didn't have to. Because part of me, some quiet, hidden, aching part, wanted to be seen like that. Wanted to remember who I was, before I became who I'm supposed to be. That night started like every other. But by the time the last candle burned out, I couldn't unhear those words, couldn't unfeel the tension in that room. And I didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. After they left, after the front door closed and I heard the car pull away, I stood alone in the hallway, still barefoot, still holding an empty wine glass. And my breath wasn't steady anymore. I should have been thinking about Daniel. I should have been replaying the laughter, the meal, the compliments on the roast lamb. But all I could hear was Ryan's voice echoing in my mind. You're the kind of woman who changes the air in the room. It was a line, sure. But it didn't feel like one. It felt like something else. Like a mirror held up to a part of me I hadn't looked at in years. I remembered the way his eyes lingered, not in the way most men do. Not hungry. Not arrogant. It was quiet. Deep. Like he saw past the jokes I cracked and the way I fussed over refilling their glasses. He looked at me like I wasn't invisible. Like I wasn't just someone's wife. And Marcus. Marcus barely said a word. But when I passed him in the hallway that night, close, just for a second, his breath hitched. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That tiny pause, that involuntary reaction, it stayed with me longer than it should have. It made me wonder if he'd been holding his breath the whole time. And that, God, that was the thing. That feeling, that pull. It was like discovering a thread you didn't realize was loose. And now you can't stop tugging. When I went upstairs to change, Daniel was already in the bathroom brushing his teeth. Our usual rhythm. Predictable. Safe. Familiar. We were fine. Not broken. Just settled. And maybe that's what scared me most. Not that something was wrong, but that nothing was. I slipped out of my dress slowly. Not for anyone, just me. But I noticed it, the way my hands trembled. The way my skin felt hypersensitive as the zipper slid down my back. Not from cold. Not from nerves. From something else. I caught my reflection in the mirror. The soft light made everything feel cinematic. My shoulders bare. The lace of my nightgown barely touching my skin. I stood there, just watching myself. And the question fell from my lips before I could stop it. Why am I thinking about them? It wasn't just the way Ryan looked at me. It was the way he didn't look away when I noticed. It was the way Marcus moved aside for me in the hallway, but not before letting that one small breath escape. Like he'd been holding back something all night. And now here I was, standing in my bedroom, wearing silk for no reason at all. Feeling like my skin had been turned inside out. Daniel walked in, wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, like he's done 100 times before. And I leaned into him. I did. His touch was warm, familiar, comforting, but my eyes didn't close, because I couldn't stop remembering how Ryan looked at my lips when I spoke. Like he was memorizing them. Not just hearing my words, but watching the shape they made. And that thought? That stayed with me longer than Daniel's arms did. I wanted to be present. I tried, but as he kissed my shoulder, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. My body was here, but my mind was still in that kitchen. With the low music playing, with the weight of their stares and the wine and the way the room suddenly felt too small. I pulled away gently, told him I was tired. He nodded, said okay, kissed my forehead, didn't ask questions. He didn't notice the way I stood at the window a little too long after he got into bed. Didn't see the way my fingers brushed the glass, like I could still feel the heat of the night clinging to it. Didn't hear the breath I let out when I finally whispered, "What am I doing?" But it was too late. The feeling was there now. And once it's there, you can't just pretend it away. You can't unsee the way someone looks at you when they think you're not looking back. You can't unfeel your own body remembering what it's like to be wanted. Not for what you do. Not for who you're supposed to be. But for something you forgot you even had inside you. I laid there for a long time, staring up at the ceiling. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but full. Heavy with things not said. Daniel was next to me. Still, breathing softly. I could hear the sheets rustle every time he shifted just a little. And I don't know what got into me, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. I whispered, barely louder than a thought. Do you ever wonder what it would be like to be seen through new eyes? There was a pause. Not a startled one. Just thoughtful. Like he was waiting to see if I'd say more. But I didn't. I just let it hang there. And then, after what felt like forever, he said it. Soft, honest, fragile. There is something. I turned my head to look at him. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't defensive. Just open. In a way I hadn't seen in a long time. But I've never known how to ask for it. That caught me off guard. The way his voice dipped a little. Like the words were heavier than he expected. He looked at me, not the way Ryan did. Not the way Marcus might have. This was different. It was a kind of nakedness that didn't need skin. I've noticed it too, he said. The way men look at you. He didn't say it with jealousy. He didn't accuse. He admitted it. Like it was something he'd carried quietly for years. At first, it bothered me. Like I should protect you from it. But after a while, I started to wonder if maybe I was the one missing something. I didn't know what to say. My heart was thudding, not from fear, but from how real it suddenly felt. This wasn't about them. Ryan, Marcus. This was about us. About me, and the parts of me I hadn't shared with him in a long time. Sometimes, he continued, I wish you could see what I see when others look at you. Maybe then, maybe you'd understand how badly I still want you. And there it was. That raw truth. He wasn't angry. He wasn't trying to control it. He was just longing. Not for someone new, but for the version of me that comes alive when I feel seen. when I feel wanted. And I realized something in that moment. We'd been living next to each other for so long. Sharing a life, a home, a bed. But somewhere along the way, we stopped letting each other see what was underneath. We'd made everything so practical, so efficient, so safe. But safe isn't the same as alive. And as I looked at him, I remembered the way his hands used to tremble the first time he touched me. The way we used to breathe together in the dark like it was sacred. I remembered how he used to watch me. And I realized he still did. I just stopped noticing. We didn't touch. But the space between us felt electric. Like something old was waking up, stretching, remembering itself after being asleep too long. He reached for my hand. Just that. And even though his fingers barely curled around mine, it felt like everything inside me shifted. Because this wasn't about guilt or betrayal. It was about desire, longing, the aching need to feel something real again. And for the first time in a long time, we weren't just husband and wife lying in bed. We were two people. Sitting at the edge of something unknown. Not afraid. Just finally, honest. The next morning, everything looked normal. The sunlight fell in strips across the kitchen floor. The smell of coffee lingered in the air. Daniel was already dressed, keys in hand, travel mug tucked under his arm. He kissed my cheek, just like he always did, and said, "Have a good day." And then he was gone. I stood there for a moment, barefoot again. Same hallway, same silence. But I wasn't the same. The weight of what we said the night before still wrapped around me. Like a second skin I couldn't quite shake off. I went about my morning, tried to be productive. I wiped down the counters, fed the cat, answered an email halfway through and forgot what I was typing. But then, my phone buzzed. It was from Daniel. Just a single message. "If I told you my friends aren't just friends, what would you say?" I stopped breathing. I read it again, then again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, not sure what to write. What did he mean? And then, a million thoughts came rushing in all at once. Ryan, Marcus, the looks, the glances, the unspoken energy that clung to the air like humidity. I texted back quickly, my heart thudding. "What do you mean?" There was a pause. Not long, but just long enough to make me question everything I thought I knew about him. About us. About them. Then came his reply. "What if I've known how they feel about you? What if I wasn't angry, but curious?" My mouth went dry. Because that was the last thing I expected. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, phone still in hand. My husband, the man I thought was too safe, too structured, too predictable, was telling me he'd seen it. Felt it, and not only wasn't threatened by it, but was intrigued. It was like discovering a whole new version of him I never knew existed. A version that was watching. Not from fear, but fascination. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I had to put the phone down to steady my hands. A few minutes passed. Then, one more message lit up the screen. "Only if you want it to. But I'd trust them with everything, even with you." That sentence hit me like a whisper across my skin. I read it slowly. Even with you. There was no pressure, no demand, no expectation. Just a door, left ajar. And my body reacted before my mind could even catch up. Because this wasn't just about fantasy. This was about permission. About trust so deep, so layered, it almost made me ache. He wasn't trying to control me. He was giving me room to breathe, to feel, to explore a part of myself that had been dormant, and now, suddenly, was wide awake. But behind that flutter of curiosity was something else too. Fear. What if I liked it too much? What if it changed everything between us? The questions rolled in like waves, one after the other. But under all of them, there was that same sensation from the night before. That buzzing in my chest. That heat beneath the surface. And I knew. Something had already shifted. There was no going back to before. The rest of the day moved around me, but I didn't move with it. I sat with the silence. With the message. with the implications. The house was still. The air felt thicker than usual, like it knew something had shifted inside me, even if I hadn't said the words out loud yet. I kept hearing his voice in my head. What if I wasn't angry, but curious? Only if you wanted to. And suddenly, everything was louder. The ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. I picked up my phone, then put it back down. Again. I didn't know what to do with my hands, or my thoughts, or the ache building in my stomach. So I did the only thing that felt safe. I opened the photo album. I flipped through pages of a life that, on paper, was perfect. Vacations. Anniversaries. Holidays where the trees glowed just right and our smiles looked untouched by doubt. But as I stared at them longer, something shifted. In almost every picture, I was next to Daniel, but always angled just slightly away. Like I was there, but leaning somewhere else in my mind. I hadn't noticed it before. Now I couldn't unsee it. And then I thought about Ryan's eyes. The way he looked at me that night, not with arrogance. Not like I was a challenge, but like I was undeniable. And Marcus, so quiet, so composed. But his breath had hitched when I passed him in the hallway. I remembered that. I remembered how that made me feel, and I had to ask myself the question I'd been avoiding all morning. Was I just being polite? Or was I inviting something I didn't dare admit? My throat tightened, because deep down, I knew there was a part of me that had wanted their attention. Not to betray Daniel, not to be reckless, but to feel something that had started fading long before anyone else stepped into the picture. To feel seen again. Desired. Not out of obligation. Not out of routine. But because something in me lit a fire in someone else. And now, that part of me wasn't quiet anymore. It was roaring. I got up and went to the mirror. Not out of vanity. Out of need. I looked at myself. And I saw everything I'd been pretending not to see. I wasn't old. I wasn't fading. I wasn't invisible. But I felt that way. So often. So quietly. For so long. And now, these men, Ryan and Marcus, they didn't make me feel invisible. They made me feel like light. Like I walked into a room and shifted gravity. And wasn't that dangerous? Because the more I thought about it, the more thrill crept in. That dark, delicious kind of thrill that sits just beneath your ribs and makes your skin feel too tight. I pressed my palm to my chest. My breathing had changed. My lips were parted, without me realizing it. And I didn't know if I was terrified or turned on. Both, maybe. Because if I stepped into this, if I even let my mind go there, what if I liked it too much? What if it made Daniel see me differently? What if I saw myself differently and couldn't go back? I sat down on the edge of the bed again, knees drawn up, hands pressed between my thighs like I was trying to hold something in. Not just lust, not just curiosity, but the rising awareness that a door had opened, and part of me was already walking through it, and even if nothing ever happened, I'd never be able to unknow this version of myself. The one who wanted, who wondered, who, for the first time in a long time, wasn't afraid to feel alive again. That evening, the air felt different. It wasn't cooler. It wasn't warmer. But it hummed, like it was holding its breath right along with me. I stood in front of my closet for longer than I should have, fingers brushing against fabrics I hadn't touched in years. Until I saw it. Tucked in the back, behind sweaters I never wore, was the dress. Red. Silk. Low back. The one I wore before I became a wife, before I softened edges to be more palatable, more polite. Before I dimmed parts of myself to make other people comfortable. I slipped it off the hanger, let the satin slide through my fingers. My heart picked up. The zipper still worked. The fit was snug, but not tight. Just enough to remind me I was still here. Still her. I lit candles. Dimmed the overhead lights. Not for anyone else. Not yet. But because I needed to see myself in a different light. Literally. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at that unread message thread with Daniel. My thumb hovered over the microphone icon, and then I pressed it. I didn't plan what to say. I just spoke. I don't want to ask questions anymore. I just want to feel something real. There was a pause, a breath. Then I added, with a steadier voice than I expected, "But I'll do this on one condition. I choose when. I choose how. This isn't just your fantasy anymore. Now it's mine too." I ended the recording and sent it before I could second guess it. My hands were trembling again, but not from fear this time. From adrenaline. From ownership. I got up, walked to the mirror. Candles flickered around me, casting soft gold over my bare shoulders. And for the first time in years, I didn't look tired, or invisible, or folded into someone else's story. I looked awake, like a woman who had been sleeping inside herself for a long time and finally opened her eyes. This wasn't about rebellion. It wasn't about escape. It was about truth. About choosing to feel. And about taking back every part of myself I'd tucked away out of guilt or routine or fear of being too much. Too much woman. Too much want. But standing there in that red dress, bathed in soft light, I didn't feel like too much. I felt right. And that was the moment everything changed. The message came just before midnight. I'd already crawled into bed. The red dress was folded neatly across the chair. My body still hummed from the fire it had sparked in me. Daniel's name lit up my screen. "They'll be over Friday night. You don't have to say a word. Just be ready. No pressure. No expectations. But they'll follow your lead." I read it once, then again. No pressure. No expectations. But something in me had already decided. Quietly. Steadily. I wouldn't run from this. The next few days stretched like taffy, slow, sticky, suspended in time. I moved through the house like I was underwater, hyper-aware of everything. The click of my heels on the hardwood, the way the air shifted through the open kitchen window, the sound of my own breath echoing in empty rooms. Every ordinary moment felt heavier, like it was carrying meaning it hadn't before. On Wednesday, I went out and bought new candles. On Thursday, I polished the wine glasses. Every one. I don't know why that mattered, but it did. Friday came. I didn't need to set an alarm. I was already awake, hours before the sun even considered rising. I made coffee, watered the plants, changed the sheets. All the things I used to rush through. I did slowly now. Intentionally. My hands knew what they were doing. But my mind kept drifting. To them. To the way Ryan's voice lingered on the edges of a sentence. To how Marcus looked at me when he thought no one noticed. I wondered if they were nervous. I wondered if they had talked about me. I wondered if this was real. By 6, the table was set. Not fancy, but thoughtful. 3 plates. Linen napkins. The good cutlery we almost never used. Candles flickered in the centerpiece. Not too bright. Just enough to feel like something was about to happen. Jazz played low in the background, something smoky and slow, like the sound of a secret whispered through a closed door. I wore black. Not the kind of black that hides you. The kind that defines you. The kind that says, "I know who I am, and I'm done pretending I don't." My heart was steady until I heard the car. Tires on gravel. I moved to the window, careful not to be seen. 2 doors. 2 distinct thunks. Then, silence. Not the quiet kind. The waiting kind. My breath caught. I didn't move. I didn't have to, because the next sound was a knock. One, then another. I didn't rush. I let them wait, just a second longer. Long enough to remember who I was. Long enough to choose this moment, not out of pressure, not out of confusion, but because I was ready. I walked to the door, my hand wrapped around the handle. And everything, my past, my promises, my fears, my longings, waited on the other side. I opened it. The door opened with a soft creak. And there they were. Ryan, Marcus. No grins. No smugness. Just presence. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. Ryan's eyes met mine first. His voice was a whisper against the evening air. Evening. He didn't smile, but he didn't look away. His eyes held something that made my pulse slow and speed up at the same time. Not hunger, not dominance, but reverence. Like I was something he'd seen only in a dream and couldn't believe was real now, standing in front of him. Marcus stayed a step behind. Quiet. Watchful. He held a small wooden box in his hands, a bottle of wine tucked neatly inside. Burgundy glass, dark as velvet. He offered it to me without a word. I took it with trembling fingers. "Come in," I said, but even I barely recognized the sound of my voice. It was low, steady, almost ceremonial. They stepped inside. Slowly. No rush. No assuming. Their restraint was louder than any flirtation could have been. They didn't touch me. Not even a brush of fingers. But they were close. I felt the shift in the air the second the door closed behind them. The house, my house, suddenly didn't feel so familiar. It felt like something was about to happen. Like the air itself was waiting. I led them to the living room. The candles danced in the low light. The record still spun softly, Miles Davis, low brass and lazy piano curling into every corner of the space. I poured the wine. My hands weren't shaking much, just enough for the bottle to clink softly against the rim of the glass. They noticed. Of course they did, but no one said a word. I handed a glass to Ryan, then Marcus. Then I kept mine close to my chest, fingers wrapped tight around the stem like it might anchor me. Ryan leaned in slightly, not close enough to invade, but close enough that I could feel his breath. He reached up, slowly, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers were warm. Careful. Reverent. "You look devastating," he said. It wasn't a line. It was a confession. And my body responded. Not with heat. Not yet. With stillness. Like every cell in me was holding its breath. I felt my lips part. My breath catch. But I didn't move. Neither did they. They stood on either side of me now. Not touching. Just orbiting. Like moons pulled toward a star they weren't sure they were allowed to reach. I sat down first. Crossed my legs slowly. Sipped the wine. They followed, mirroring my pace, matching my rhythm. They weren't leading this. I was. And I felt it. For the first time in a long time. I really felt it. The weight of being seen. Not for what I give. Not for what I manage or keep together. But for what I am. A woman. Not just a wife. Not just a hostess. A woman. We didn't talk much. It was all there already. In the pauses, the looks, the held breath. Marcus finally spoke. Just once. "We don't want to rush anything." His voice was low, almost hoarse. And I knew, without him saying it, that he meant more than just the moment. He meant me. He meant this fragile, sacred thing I was offering. My trust, my vulnerability. I set my glass down, uncrossed my legs, let my hands fall into my lap. "I know," I whispered. "That's why you're here." And that was the moment something shifted again. Still no one moved too fast. But now, the waiting wasn't passive. It was electric. Every glance, every breath, every heartbeat became a question. "Are we doing this? Are you sure? Are you ready?" I didn't need to answer out loud. Because when Ryan's fingertips brushed lightly across the curve of my wrist, barely there, like the first stroke of wind before a storm, I didn't flinch. I let him. And when Marcus reached for my other hand, holding it gently between both of his, solid, steady, reverent again, I didn't pull away. I leaned in, eyes closed, heart open, breath slow, and the moment stretched, wide and warm and infinite. Like the space between a lightning strike and the thunder that follows. The room felt full, not crowded, full, of breath, of awareness, of quiet, aching want. They were still by my side, Ryan with his knuckles barely brushing my wrist, Marcus with his thumb tracing slow circles on the back of my hand. And then, the front door opened. Softly, no drama, no footsteps echoing down the hallway. Just presence. I turned my head, and Daniel was standing there. Not stiff, not surprised. Just watching. His gaze moved to me, then to them, then back to me again. He said nothing for a moment. Let the quiet settle around us like silk. Then he stepped closer. Slowly, not as a man coming to claim something, but as someone who had already given it. And finally, he spoke. Soft, grounded. You're safe, he said. I want you to feel that. Even now. My heart. I didn't know if it ached or swelled. Maybe both. Because somehow, he wasn't giving me permission, he was offering something far more rare. Witnessing. He saw me. All of me. Not just the part that cooked dinner, or smiled for photos, or held him through his hard days. He saw the part that wanted. The part that needed. The part I'd hidden so long, I almost forgot it was mine. I shifted slightly, and the silk of my red dress slipped from my shoulder. Barely. Just enough to fall from its perfect place. And before I could move to fix it, Ryan reached forward, carefully, and caught the strap between his fingers. His skin grazed mine. And I inhaled. Not sharply. Not dramatically. Just, fully, like I hadn't realized how long I'd been holding my breath. His fingers paused there. Still. Waiting. And in that pause, everything balanced, on trust, on choice, on the trembling edge of becoming someone new. The music curled around us, something slow and soft, like an old love song hummed in the dark. The candles flickered against the walls, shadows dancing across skin and fabric and glass. Marcus reached for a nearby cushion and placed it behind my back, easing me into the center of the room. I let them guide me, not because I was giving up control, but because I finally trusted the space I was in. Trusted them. Daniel stepped forward, but didn't touch me. He crouched beside the arm of the couch, his hand resting on the fabric, his voice steady. Every moment here is yours. Every decision. Every breath. And I believed him. Because nothing about this felt like surrender. It felt like returning. To myself. To the woman I'd almost buried beneath years of being enough for everyone but me. They still hadn't kissed me. Not Ryan. Not Marcus. They were waiting. And I realized. I didn't want the first real touch to be accidental. I wanted it to be chosen. So I reached for Ryan first. Not his face. His chest. Just laid my hand there, over his heart. It was racing. Like mine. His eyes met mine. And in them, I saw every question he didn't dare ask. I answered with just one word. Yes. Then I turned to Marcus. He was already watching me, like he'd memorized the lines of my face in the candlelight. I held my hand out. He took it. And, just like that, the room exhaled. We didn't rush. Nothing about this was fast or frantic. It was deliberate. Every motion, every glance, every brush of skin was slow and meaningful and full of tension, so exquisite it almost hurt. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, the world fell away. No expectations. No titles. No shoulds. Just sensation. Just emotion. Just presence. 3 men. 1 woman. No roles. Only connection. They never moved without my permission. Even their gazes sought consent. Ryan whispered against my ear once. If you ever want to stop. And I whispered back. I'll let you know. Because I knew I could. And that made all the difference. Because this wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was mine. Fully, deeply, and finally, mine. The night settled over the house like a gentle sigh. Ryan and Marcus had gone. Quietly. Respectfully. It wasn't about possession. It never was. It was about presence. About being seen, not just by others, but by myself. I curled up against Daniel, the familiar warmth of his body grounding me in a way I didn't know I needed. His breath was slow, steady, like a promise. I turned my head to him, searching his face for something I couldn't quite name. And I whispered, almost shyly, "Thank you." He looked at me, curious. For what? For showing me. I paused, trying to find words that felt honest. For showing me I was never just yours. I was mine too. He pulled me closer, and we held each other in the quiet dark, no words left to say, no apologies to make. Just awe. Awe at the strange, tangled path that had brought us here. At the fragile, powerful truth of connection and choice. At the fact that sometimes love means letting go, not to lose, but to find yourself again. And in that stillness, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything I was brave enough to become. Have you ever felt caught between safety and longing? Have you ever wondered what it means to truly be seen? If you've ever had a secret wish you never shared, maybe it's time to let it out. Subscribe to Sheila Hart Tales, where stories like this remind us we're never alone in the deepest parts of ourselves. Tap the bell and come back for the next story that changes everything. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment to wake up. Have you ever had a moment? A single, quiet moment that changed everything? The way you saw yourself, forever? Maybe it was a glance, a word, a choice. Something small, but with the power to shift your whole world. For me, that night was exactly that. Not because of what happened, but because of what it made me realize. That I was more than the roles I played. More than the labels I wore. More than anyone else's expectations. And maybe you feel that too. The pull between what is safe and what feels real. Between the life you live and the life you dream of. Between the person you've been and the person you want to become. If any part of this story stirred something deep inside you, a whisper you've been afraid to hear or a question you've never dared to ask, you are not alone. We're all navigating that delicate space between fear and desire, comfort and growth. So, if you want to keep exploring what lies beneath the surface, the messy, beautiful, complicated truths of love, longing, and self-discovery, subscribe to Sheila Hart Tales. Tap the bell so you never miss a story that might just change your own life. Because sometimes, the slow-burning stories, the ones that linger long after the last word, are the ones that awaken us. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. And remember, your story is still unfolding. You're still becoming. And that's a beautiful thing.